So, those who know me know I'm a trial attorney, but by no means is this channel supposed to be a legal review of anything, firearm related. But I just have to say, the question that comes up all the time from students of my pistol class is, when can I use a firearm in self-defense? What are the rules? And I think this Rittenhouse trial is the perfect example why I always tell people, well, think of it as there are no rules. You're not entitled to use lethal force until you feel there's no other choice. You have no choice but to defend yourself at that point. Somebody's putting you at significant physical risk or possible death, and you know, compound that with the fact that jurors can do whatever jurors want to do, and prosecutors, the issue of whether your use of deadly force was reasonable or not is not a matter of law for the judge to determine. It's a matter of fact that's left to the jury. Unfortunately, this prosecutor just has, not a single moral cloth in his body. The arguments he's trying to make are basically ridiculous. So one of his main arguments is, well, Kyle, nobody actually shot you first, so therefore your use of lethal force wasn't reasonable. Despite the fact that somebody who threatened to kill him was now running at him, and despite the fact he, raised the firearm in an attempt to dissuade him from continuing the attack, the guy continued the attack, and then, as the prosecutor points out, grabbed the gun to try to pull it away from Kyle. So, according to the prosecutor, nothing there gives you the right to use self-defense, and you're like, well, okay, I guess it's an issue for the jury to decide whether or not the gentleman would be able to wrestle the gun away from him. I really don't think that's a question that we leave to a jury as to who would have won that wrestle over a firearm. I think if somebody's trying to wrestle a firearm away from you, it's a pretty good presumption to make that if they win, they might use it against you. But it got really, really weird when we got to the point where Kyle fired at somebody only after the individual pointed the barrel at Kyle's head. The prosecutor was trying to argue, well, he wasn't in a shooting position. First of all, he's arguing he could have shot you from 10 feet away. So the fact that he got up to 3 feet from you, should have told you he wasn't going to shoot you. He could have shot you from 10 feet away. Of course, he wasn't pointing the muzzle at him from 10 feet away, but apparently that's irrelevant to the prosecutor. But then the prosecutor's now arguing, well, yeah, he may have aimed the muzzle at you, but try to demonstrate it, but he wasn't holding it straight out, two hands. The prosecutor literally said he wasn't holding it with two hands. He had it back up here, and he was aiming at you with the muzzle from back here, which we call basically the retention position. That's where you hold the firearm in a manner so that the person you're confronted with can't reach out and get the firearm from you. So you close physical distance, but you have use a retention position. So okay, so the fact that the guy is chasing you, pulls a gun on you when you've had no interaction with him, and then points the gun at you is one thing, and then the prosecutor literally asked him, did he say he was going to shoot you? Like, oh my God. You're really trying to argue the reasonable person standard should be, well, until your attacker tells you he's going to shoot you, he can just wave a gun at you and point it at you. That's literally what the prosecutor's saying. If you're a woman, okay? If you're a woman, let's follow the logic here. If you're a woman and you're in a parking garage at night and a man is approaching you, corners you in the parking garage, pulls a gun on you, and I think anybody in the world would say you have a reasonable fear that you're about to get, at a minimum, raped, at a minimum, possibly, most likely injured and possibly killed, according to the logic being used by this prosecutor, no. You have to ask him first if he intends to rape, harm, or murder you. That's literally what he's saying here. So, yeah, it's amazing. And then I think with the first guy that approached him, he's saying, well, you raised your gun at him. He was running towards you. You raised your gun at him, and for a split second, that guy put his hands up, still continued to charge, but put his hands up for a second. And then when you put the gun down, from that point on, you were the initial aggressor, which is an issue of law that you determine who the initial aggressor is. You can tell someone, you can say something to someone about their mama. If they come and attack you and you defend yourself, it's them coming to attack you. It was not a reasonable response for you saying something about their mama. So, you're probably not going to be considered the initial aggressor there. It's just distasteful as the yo mama thing may have been. Yeah, okay, it's not reasonable, and it's not permitted to use physical force against somebody for saying something verbally to you. As much as we love those Twisted Tea videos of the guy who whacked the guy in the face with a Twisted Tea, yeah, he had it coming to him, but technically that wasn't permitted under the law. But anyway, so it's kind of disgusting to see what the arguments this prosecutor makes. I understand, yeah, if it's a matter of law as to certain issues, but these are issues of fact, the reasonable person standard. Did he, did Kyle have a reasonable fear for his life here? And, trying to argue that, well, you're the one with the rifle. Why would you have a reasonable fear of anybody trying to, kill you? You're the one with the rifle. He only had a handgun. You had a bigger, badder gun. Like, oh my God, we're really doing this. We really need the courts. We need a body of law. This is why we have castle doctrines. It puts the burden back on the prosecution, unfortunately, and that's something I skipped. The burden is basically on Kyle here, not to show he acted reasonably. It's a defense to the claim. The prosecution just has to show, he intended to shoot him, which he did. He told Kyle, did you intend to shoot and kill him? And Kyle's like, well, I intended to keep him from attacking me. Best tool I had at my disposal was a firearm, and some older dude is coming at me and running at me. Another dude swinging a skateboard with metal trucks at me. Another guy was kicking him in the face, and the prosecutor tried to argue, well, that wasn't reasonable for you to shoot him, which, hey, in a vacuum, if somebody's trying to kick you in the face and cut your face and that's it, that's fine. But what you have to understand is when you're under a physical attack from an aggressor, you don't know what their intentions are, and you have to assume, okay, if this person kicks me in the face and I lose consciousness, are they going to use my firearm against me? That's the question, and that's a question the courts don't want to deal with as a question of law. They leave it as a question of fact, and I think that's a problem. So now I understand why certain prosecutors, and I'm trying not to get into politics here, but why certain prosecutors argue against stand your ground laws. Stand your ground laws don't give you the right to just shoot anybody for looking at you the wrong way. Basically, what the stand your ground laws say is there's a presumption that you wouldn't have the ability to outrun an attacker or overpower an attacker or something else. If you have a valid or a prima facie initial showing of self-defense, then it shifts the burden back to the prosecution. What it would do is avoid some of the ridiculous questioning and testimony that we're getting out of this prosecutor. I know there's always a question. You can look at some of this and say, well, okay, what would I have done in that second? But when the prosecutor is going freeze frame by freeze frame, it literally ended the day basically by saying, well, here's a video with 720 stills in it. We're going to go over 500. We're going to go still by still. Okay, so it's still 345. He's doing this at 346. He's pointing his pistol at you, but he hasn't pulled the trigger yet. So why did you decide that you were, in harm's way? Like, he could have shot at you 10 seconds leading up to this. So your belief that he was going to use the pistol was unreasonable. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe we got to get to a point where a judge can rule on some of these self-defense matters as a matter of law, which kind of in some weird way what stand your ground laws do. But at some point there has to be a point where a judge can say, you know what? Yeah, we're not gonna make a defendant have to prove whether or not this guy could have shot me from 5 yards or 10 yards as opposed to 3 feet away. It's just that's not a burden we're putting on the person who's under attack by somebody else. The other issue is, I get it. You can say self-defense wasn't necessary or wasn't reasonable because everybody attacking you was unarmed. That's it's an issue, fact issue for the jury. But here we are trying to argue a 5-pound skateboard with metal trucks. is not a dangerous weapon. Actually, under New Jersey law, it is. Any object that can cause serious injury, if used as a weapon, you can get a weapons charge. But the situation we have in this case is, it's funny. You had even one of the guys that Kyle shot saying, well, no, the reason I was chasing Kyle is somebody was hitting him with a skateboard, and I knew that can cause serious physical injury or whatnot. So I was just running to him to render aid. And I'm thinking, you just proved the point that a skateboard can cause serious injury or possible death. So I don't understand this. The prosecution case is all over the board. Some of their own witnesses have contradicted a lot of their arguments, but keep in mind, this still goes to a jury. Still goes to a jury. And if anyone on that jury has the same political mindset as the prosecutor, that person could say, I just don't believe anybody has a right to self-defense unless somebody has shot at them first. So, I mean, that same juror, I guess, I hope that same juror doesn't end up in a parking garage somewhere with a guy coming at her with a knife, because at that point, that juror is going to realize, holy shit, I wish I had a gun right now, because I don't feel like fighting fair with this guy. I don't feel that, I have to be the civil person and fight a knife with another knife. I'm a woman who's about to get raped, physically injured, and possibly murdered. If a guy comes at me in a dark, deserted parking garage, shit, I wish I had a gun. And it's unfortunate. That should be something these judges can rule on as a matter of law. And, we'll see what happens here. But again, this isn't meant to be. I know I've gone over 11 minutes, and I'm just scratching the surface of this. Andrew Branca is doing a great job on the law of self-defense by going through day by day and explaining anything. The only point I wanted to make is, this is some scary stuff. You think, well, this is reasonable. If someone does this, if someone points a gun at you, you pretty much have the right to defend yourself. No, you realistically, you have the right for a jury to determine whether your use of force in a self-defense situation was reasonable or not. And that sometimes comes down to the abilities of the attorneys arguing and the makeup of your jury. And I think that's bad. And I think that's why there was a push recently, and there should be another push for Castle Doctrine and Save Your Ground laws. I think it shifts the burdens appropriately, shifts the burden of proof to the prosecution where it really should be. Again, this is Matthew, the average gun owner. Hopefully we'll see a verdict recently. Hopefully there will be a reasonable and well-reasoned outcome to this. I'm not really sure, but the point I wanted to make, the long and short of it, is it's really up to what a jury decides. There's no attorney who can tell you, if you can ask somebody in a class and say, well, if somebody did this and somebody did that, and I use my firearm self-defense, am I protected? No, I'm seeing situations we have a case here where we have clear video. It was a chase. He got cornered, and only then did he fire. When he raised the firearm, said, well, that didn't deter him. So I kept running. I turned around and kept running. And it was funny. The prosecution was trying to argue, well, he only caught up to you because you stopped running from him. Really? Like, I don't have the right to defend myself? I have to keep running for 5 miles? At what point? I wish I was on this stand. I'm like, well, how many miles do you want me to run before I can slow down and turn around and try to deter this guy from going on a murderous rampage on me? But that's where it is. He got cornered with cars. There were other people there. There was somebody there who just fired a couple shots. He had to deal with that. And, unfortunately, you got a prosecutor who's going frame by frame and asking questions in front of the jury as if you have the time to go through the OODA loop and decide split second by split second what you're going to do with the situation. And I think that's sad. It's a problem, major problem we have with the criminal justice system in America. And I think there need to be some serious protections, not issues of fact that go to the jury, but a matter of law that can be dealt with by a judge to protect people's right to use self-defense. So that's where it is.